I always thought heartbreak had a sound maybe like glass cracking, or a violin string snapping under pressure. But standing there, in the middle of Daniel's wedding reception, watching him kiss his bride, I realized heartbreak was silent. Terrifyingly, beautifully silent. The music swelled. People cheered. My smile stayed perfectly fixed in place, the kind you wear for photos and survival. My champagne glass trembled slightly, betraying me. Somewhere between the toasts and the dancing, I forgot how to breathe. I shouldn't have come. God knows everyone had told me that. Eli, it's not healthy, my sister said. Eli, you're torturing yourself, my best friend added. But how do you not show up to the wedding of the man who once promised he'd marry you? Daniel used to call me his forever. Now he was someone else's eternity. The air in the outdoor reception was thick with laughter and music. Fairy lights tangled through oak trees, the smell of wine and barbecue mingling in the warm Californian evening. Every detail screamed happiness, except for the quiet man in the back, trying to disappear behind the dessert table. That man was me. I was halfway through another glass of champagne when it happened. Shitsuri! A voice behind me blurted, just as something cold splashed down my shoulder. I gasped, turning to find a tall guy holding what used to be a full glass of red wine. My white suit jacket, already my one desperate attempt at confidence, was ruined. Oh my God! I'm so sorry, he said again, setting the glass down and grabbing napkins from a nearby table. I swear, I wasn't aiming for you. I was trying to escape a drunk aunt. I blinked, half furious, half mortified. Well, congratulations, I muttered. You just assassinated my suit. He winced, then looked at Miral. I looked. His eyes were dark, warm, and ridiculously kind, the kind that made it impossible to stay angry. I'm Nathan, he said, pressing napkins into my hand. Best man/accidental saboteur. Of course he was. Of course fate would send me Daniel's best man to finish the job of destroying me. I gave a humorless laugh. You're Daniel's best man. He nodded. And you're Eli, right? The college boyfriend. My heart dropped. Wow, he talks about me. Nathan hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. He used to. A lot. Then softer. He said you made him feel understood. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I ended up doing both awkwardly, quietly, as Nathan handed me his own jacket. Here, he said, slipping it over my shoulders. Until you can get that cleaned. The fabric was warm. He smelled like cedarwood and rain. And for the first time that night, I felt seen not as a ghost of Daniel's past, but as someone real. We stood there for a while, surrounded by the blur of celebration. Daniel and his bride danced under the fairy lights, and I watched, numb, until Nathan nudged me gently. You don't have to watch, you know, he murmured. You've already lived that dance once. The words hit harder than the wine ever could. I turned to him, trying to joke it off. Are you always this philosophical at weddings? He smiled. Only when someone looks like they're breaking on the inside. Something in me cracked open. Maybe it was the honesty in his tone, or maybe it was just the exhaustion of pretending. I sighed. I told myself I'd be fine. I thought I'd just sit in the back, have a drink, clap politely, and go home. No tears, no drama. And now, I stared down at my ruined sleeve. Now I just want to vanish. Nathan tilted his head. Or start over. I looked up, confused. Start over. He nodded toward the dance floor. They've got slow songs coming up. Nobody's looking. Dance with me. I laughed in disbelief. You can't be serious. Dead serious, he said, offering his hand. Consider it. Emotional CPR. Something reckless in me said yes before my pride could say no. The crowd had no idea that the ex and the best man were quietly swaying in the shadows behind them. Nathan's hand rested lightly on my waist, respectful yet steady. I expected it to hurt or feel like betrayal, but it didn't. Felt like air after drowning. You know, I murmured. You're really bad at helping people blend in. He chuckled. Maybe you're not meant to blend in tonight. For a moment, time softened. The laughter, the music, the bittersweet ache, they all blurred. All I could feel was Nathan's heartbeat, strong and steady against mine. And that's when Daniel noticed. Across the dance floor, our eyes met his, surprised and unreadable. Mine, tired but free. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Nathan tightened his hold slightly, a silent shield between me and whatever history might spill out. I whispered, "He's looking." Nathan's lips quirked. Then let him see what he lost. When the song ended, I stepped back, breathless. My pulse was chaos. "That was reckless," I said softly. "Yeah," Nathan replied, his grin turning shy. "But maybe it was worth it." Later that night, when the crowd thinned and laughter turned to quiet murmurs, I found myself outside again. The sky was painted in deep violet and gold, the air humming with leftover joy. I stood near the parking lot, staring at the reflection of fairy lights and puddles, wondering how heartbreak could coexist with peace like this. "Hey!" a voice said behind me. I turned. Nathan was there, his tie loosened, his hair a mess, holding 2 cups of coffee instead of champagne. "You look like you needed something non-alcoholic," he said, handing me one. "Thanks," I murmured, taking it. The warmth seeped into my fingers. "You didn't have to," he shrugged. "I wanted to." We stood in silence, the kind that didn't feel awkward, just honest. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a while. "Sure. Why'd you really come tonight?" I stared into the coffee cup, watching the steam swirl. "Closure, I guess. I thought if I saw him happy, it would stop hurting." "And did it?" I smiled faintly. "Not yet. But it doesn't feel impossible anymore." He nodded, understanding more than I said. "You're stronger than you think. Or just stubborn." He laughed. "Stubborn's a good start." The wedding lights flickered behind us, laughter echoing faintly across the field. I looked at Nathan. Really looked. He wasn't like Daniel. His smile wasn't polished. It was genuine. His presence didn't demand attention. It invited calm. He didn't make my heart race in fear of losing him. He made it steady. "Did you love him?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. "With everything I had. And now," I looked toward the glowing tent one last time. "Now I just hope he's loved half as much." Nathan's expression softened, something unspoken passing between us. Then, after a beat, he said, "For what it's worth, I think you deserve better than being someone's used to be." I laughed under my breath. "You really know how to talk to the broken-hearted." He smiled. "Maybe I'm just good at recognizing my own reflection." I turned to him, caught off guard. "You've been there too?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah. The guy I loved married someone else last spring. I was the best man too." My jaw dropped. "You're kidding." "Wish I was." He sipped his coffee, smirking. "Guess we're part of a very specific, very tragic club." I laughed, a real laugh this time, warm and unguarded. "The best man for someone else's love club." "Exactly," he said, his eyes glinting. "Membership includes free coffee, ruined suits, and questionable life decisions." "Sounds about right." We both smiled, and something shifted, something fragile and quiet, like dawn breaking inside the night. He took a hesitant step closer. "Eli, I know tonight's not exactly the fairy tale kind of night, but if you ever want to talk or, I don't know, go somewhere that doesn't smell like regret and cologne-eyed like that." I met his gaze, surprised by how easy it was to breathe near him. "You're serious?" "As serious as a guy who just destroyed your outfit and danced with you in front of your ex can be." I laughed again, shaking my head. "You're impossible." "Maybe, but you're smiling again." And damn, him was right. The night wrapped around us like a soft blanket, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel haunted by what I'd lost. I felt curious about what might come next. Nathan's words echoed in my chest long after the wedding lights dimmed. "You're smiling again." It wasn't something monumental, just a small truth. But sometimes, small truths have the power to shake you more than grand ones ever could. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through my cheap motel blinds. My suit jacket was still hanging over the chair, stained red like a wound that hadn't quite healed. The memory of the night replayed in fragments: the dance, the coffee, Nathan's voice, low and careful. I had spent the whole drive back from the wedding thinking about him. Not Daniel. Not his vows or his bride's perfect white dress. But Nathan, his laugh, the warmth in his eyes when he said my name. Scared me a little how easy it was to think of him. How gentle he'd been with something I didn't even realize was fragile until he touched it. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Morning coffee addict. I found a dry cleaner that might save your jacket. Nathan, I couldn't help smiling. Then another text. Also, there's a diner near your motel that serves life-changing pancakes. You in? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every rational part of me screamed no. You don't go to breakfast with your ex's best man. You don't start anything with someone who reminds you how easily people can vanish. But rationality had done nothing for me lately except make me lonely. Give me 15 minutes. The diner was small, tucked between a hardware store and a pawn shop, the kind of place that smelled like butter and nostalgia. Nathan was already there, sitting in a booth near the window, 2 mugs of steaming coffee waiting. He looked casual, in a faded navy t-shirt and jeans, his hair slightly messy. Somehow, he managed to look effortless and warm all at once. You look alive, he said when I slid into the booth. Barely, I replied, reaching for the coffee. Pretty sure I'm still emotionally hungover. He grinned. There's no cure for that except carbs and sarcasm. We fell into easy conversation. Surprised me how natural it felt. With Daniel, everything had always been intense, every word measured, every silence heavy. But with Nathan, there was space. Space to breathe, to laugh, to not be perfect. At one point, he leaned forward, chin resting on his hand. Can I ask something? You don't have to answer if it's weird. Go for it. What was he like? Daniel, the guy you loved. The question caught me off guard, but there was no malice in his voice. Just quiet curiosity. I hesitated. He was magnetic. You know, the kind of person who walks into a room and suddenly everyone's brighter just because he's there? That was Daniel. He could talk his way out of anything, charm anyone. I think I fell in love with the way he saw me, like I was the only one who really got him. Nathan nodded slowly. And what broke it? I looked down at my plate. Life, maybe. Fear. He started worrying about what people would say, what his family would think. He said he loved me, but he wanted a future that didn't have to be defended every day. So he chose easy. The silence between us stretched, soft but heavy. Then Nathan said, "That's not love, Eli. That's survival. And you were brave enough to want more than that." Something tightened in my throat. I wasn't used to being told I was brave. Mostly, I'd been called naive. You sound like someone who's lived it, I said carefully. He smiled faintly. Maybe I have. Maybe I'm just better at giving advice than following it. We both laughed quietly, the kind that hides more than it reveals. After breakfast, we walked through the quiet streets, our coffee cups empty, our steps unhurried. The small-town calm felt foreign but comforting. When we reached my car, Nathan stopped. "Hey, listen," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know this is probably the last thing you need, but there's a music festival in town tonight. Outdoor stage, good food, bad lighting. You should come." I raised an eyebrow. "You're inviting me to another celebration right after a wedding?" He laughed. "Yeah, but this one doesn't involve vows or heartbreak. Just loud guitars and too much beer." I hesitated. "I don't even know if I'm in the mood for fun," he finished, smirking. "That's exactly why you should come." I sighed. "You're persistent." "Occupational hazard," he said. "I work in social services. I'm paid to make people feel less miserable." That explained the kindness, the way he seemed to notice when I stopped smiling. "Fine," I said, pretending to think. "But if it sucks, you're buying me dinner." "Deal." That night, the festival buzzed with music and laughter. Lanterns swayed above the crowd, and the air smelled like popcorn and rain-soaked earth. Nathan found me near the entrance, his grin immediate, like he'd been waiting. "Wow," he said, looking me up and down. You clean up nicely. And by that I mean you look less like a man attending his ex's funeral. High praise, I said dryly. We pushed through the crowd, shoulder to shoulder. Every brush of contact sent a strange warmth through me, unsettling and addictive. We watched bands play, shared fries from a paper cup, and laughed at how terrible one of the singers was at tuning his guitar. When a slow song started, I froze. Nathan noticed instantly. Relax, he said. We're not doing the wedding thing again. But then, as the melody grew softer, he added, unless you want to. I turned to him, heart stuttering. You're serious? He shrugged, a shy smile curving his lips. Always. This time, there were no fairy lights or watchful eyes, just a dark field, soft music, and two men swaying under the stars. My head rested lightly on his shoulder, and I realized how long it had been since I felt this kind of peace. Does it ever stop feeling like betrayal? I whispered. He tightened his hold slightly. Only when you stop comparing the past to what's possible. I looked up at him, the world spinning slow and steady. And what's possible, Nathan? His eyes met mine steady, grounding, sincere. This. The kiss was gentle, unexpected, a question asked in silence. And in that moment, all the noise of the world, the laughter, the music, the ghosts faded away. When we pulled apart, I realized I was smiling again. Not the kind of smile you fake for survival, but one that comes from remembering you're still alive. The next few weeks felt like waking up from a long winter. Nathan and I started meeting often, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for nothing at all. He dropped by my apartment with cheap takeout and terrible movies. He never pushed, never asked for more than I could give. He became this quiet, constant presence. One evening, as we sat on my couch surrounded by pizza boxes, he looked at me and said, "You know what's funny? I think we both showed up at that wedding for closure. And maybe we found a beginning instead." I laughed softly. "You sound like a Hallmark card." "Hey," he protested, grinning. "Some of those cards are deep, right? Like, sorry your heart got stomped on, here's a cupcake?" "Exactly." He chuckled, then grew serious. "But really, Eli, you make things lighter. I didn't realize how much I missed laughing until you started making me do it again." That startled me, because I'd been thinking the same thing. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air was thick with something unspoken, electric and fragile. Then Nathan leaned in, just close enough for his breath to brush my cheek. "Tell me if this is too soon," he whispered. It wasn't. Our lips met again, deeper this timeless tentative, more real. The kind of kiss that feels like forgiveness and risk all at once. When it ended, we both sat there, quiet, breathing hard. I laughed nervously. "So, does this make us something?" He smiled. "It makes us honest. But honesty has its price." Because the next day Daniel called. His name lighting up my phone screen felt like a ghost walking back into the room. For a long moment, I just stared at it, torn between curiosity and dread. Finally, I answered. "Hey, Eli." His voice was the same steady, polished, careful. "Can we talk?" My stomach dropped. "I don't think that's a good idea. I owe you an apology. For everything." I closed my eyes. "It's been months, Daniel." "I know. But seeing you at the wedding get messed with me. I realized how much don't." I interrupted. "Please don't say you miss me. You made your choice." Silence. Then quietly, "You're right. I just wanted to know if you're happy." My gaze drifted to Nathan, who was sitting across the room, reading something on his phone. When he looked up and smiled at me, I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. "I'm getting there," I said softly. "Good," Daniel replied, voice barely audible. "You deserve that." When I hung up, I exhaled, realizing I wasn't shaking. The past had lost its power. Nathan looked at me curiously. "That him?" I nodded. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, meaning it. "For the first time, I think I really am." He smiled, and in that moment, I understood something profound. Closure isn't always about walking away, it's about finding someone who makes staying possible again. Weeks turned into months. We started spending weekends together, road trips, quiet mornings, arguments about how to cook eggs. He was patient when I hesitated, gentle when I panicked. He didn't try to fix me. He just stayed. One night, as we stood watching the sunset from the hill behind his apartment, Nathan slipped his hand into mine. "You ever think about what people would say?" he asked. "About us?" He nodded. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I spent too long living for other people's approval. I'm done apologizing for being happy." Nathan smiled, a small, proud smile. "Good, because I'm not planning to hide either." I leaned my head against his shoulder, watching the sky melt into gold and crimson. "Funny," I murmured. "I thought I'd just cry quietly at my ex's wedding. Instead, I met someone who taught me how to laugh again." Nathan turned to me, his expression soft. "Guess we both found the wrong weddings, but the right person." And as the last light of day faded, I realized something. Heartbreak doesn't always end where you think it will. Sometimes, it ends with a ruined suit, a clumsy dance, and a best man who somehow becomes your beginning. Spring came early that year. The streets were filled with blooming magnolias, and every morning, sunlight spilled through Nathan's kitchen window, touching his face while he brewed coffee like it was a ritual for calm. It had been almost 6 months since the wedding. 6 months since my heart had broken and rebuilt itself in the same lifetime. Nathan and I had found a rhythm. We weren't perfecto one ispit, there was honesty in the way we loved each other. He left sticky notes on my bathroom mirror that said things like, "Eat breakfast, you chaotic angel." I made him playlists that alternated between heartbreak anthems and love songs, because balance is important. But outside our little world, things weren't always as kind. We lived in a small town where people's smiles came with curiosity, where two men holding hands still made heads turn. Some days it didn't bother me, others it did. One evening, after we'd gone to the farmer's market together, a group of guys walking by made a comment loud enough to hear. Something crude, something that hit deeper than I wanted it to. Nathan squeezed my hand tighter, pretending not to notice, but I saw the way his jaw clenched. "Don't," I said quietly. "They're not worth it." "I know," he murmured. "But I hate when people act like we're something to whisper about." I stopped walking, forcing him to face me. "We're not whispers, Nathan. We're real. That's what matters." He looked at me for a long moment before nodding. "You always know what to say." I smiled faintly, "Only because I've been on the other side of silence." That night we sat on his balcony, watching the stars. I rested my head against his shoulder. "Do you ever think it'll get easier?" "Not always," he admitted. "But I think it's worth it anyway." I looked up at him. "Why?" He turned toward me, eyes steady. "Because when you find the right person, the world can be as loud as it wants, and it still won't drown out what's real." The simplicity of it, the truth in it, undid me. I leaned in and kissed him, slow and certain. Summer brought warmth, road trips, and a growing sense of peace. We drove up the California coast one weekend, the ocean stretching endlessly beside us. Nathan sang along terribly to the radio, and I laughed until I cried. Somewhere near Big Sur, we stopped at a cliff overlooking the sea. The wind whipped through our hair as waves crashed below. Nathan took my hand. "Do you ever think about how weird life is?" he asked. "All the time. I mean, if I hadn't spilled wine on you that night, I would have left early, gone home, and probably eaten ice cream in the dark," I said, smiling. He laughed. "Exactly. One stupid accident changed everything." I looked out at the horizon, golden and infinite. Maybe the best things start that way. Messy, unexpected, slightly inconvenient. Nathan stepped closer, his voice quieter. "I don't know what the future looks like, Eli, but I want it to have you in it." I turned to him, heart pounding, not from surprise, but from the recognition that I'd been waiting to hear those words and didn't even realize it. "You already do," I whispered. But life, in its usual unpredictable fashion, tested that peace soon after. Daniel reappeared. Not dramaticalino surprise visits, no desperate confessions, just an invitation. He was moving to another state, starting a new job, and he wanted to say goodbye properly. Nathan encouraged me to go. "Closure isn't betrayal," he said gently. "It's choosing peace." So I went. When I arrived, Daniel was waiting outside a cafe downtown, wearing that same perfectly practiced smile. "You look good," he said. "So do you." We talked about safe things at first work, mutual friends, the weather. Then he looked at me and said, "You seem different, happier." "I am. I'm glad," he said, and for once I believed him. "You always deserved someone who could love you openly." I smiled softly. "I found him." He nodded, eyes lowering. "Then I guess everything worked out the way it was supposed to." For the first time since the breakup, I didn't feel pain when I looked at him. Just gratitude. Because without him, I never would have met Nathan. Without heartbreak, I never would have learned what real love looked like. When I returned home that evening, Nathan was waiting on the porch, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. "How was it?" he asked. "Good," I said honestly. It felt like closing a book I'd already finished. He smiled, relieved. "So, no plot twists?" "None," I said, stepping closer. "Just a happy ending." He grinned. "I like those." The following weekend, we attended another wedding, this time for Nathan's cousin. I almost didn't go. The idea of another ceremony filled with champagne and slow songs made me nervous. But Nathan promised it'd be different. "This time," he said, "you'll be with someone who actually wants to dance with you." And he was right. When the music started, Nathan pulled me to the dance floor. There was no hiding, no shame, just laughter and clumsy steps and the warmth of his hands on my back. People looked, yes, but this time I didn't care. Halfway through the song, he whispered, "You realize this is where we started?" "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Except now my suit's clean. And your heart." I looked up at him, my chest full. "Better than ever." He kissed me right there under the lights, and the world didn't end. No one gasped. Some people even clapped. And for once, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living. Later that night, as we drove home, the windows down and the radio low, Nathan reached across the console and laced his fingers through mine. "You know," he said, eyes on the road, "you're the best accident that's ever happened to me." I laughed softly. "You really need to work on your compliments." "I'm serious," he said. "That night, I thought I was ruining someone's evening. Turns out, I was saving my own." My throat tightened with emotion. "You didn't save me, Nathan. We saved each other." He smiled. "That's even better." The wind carried the scent of salt and jasmine through the car. Streetlights flickered past like memories we no longer needed to revisit. I rested my head on his shoulder, watching the blur of the world outside, and felt something settle deep inside me, a quiet certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Months later, we moved into a small apartment overlooking the city park. There were plants on every windowsill, coffee stains on the counter, and laughter echoing through every room. Sometimes, on quiet mornings, I'd watch Nathan reading on the couch, sunlight painting him gold, and I'd think about the strange, beautiful path that led us here, a ruined suit, a broken heart, and a chance encounter that became everything. If someone had told me then that I'd find love again in the unlikeliest place, I wouldn't have believed them. But maybe that's what love really isn't, perfection, not timing, just 2 people brave enough to try again when the world told them not to. As I curled against Nathan on the couch, his arm wrapping around me, he whispered, "You still think about that wedding sometimes?" I smiled. "Sometimes, but not for the reason you think." "Oh, yeah," I said, closing my eyes, "because that's the night my story didn't end, it began." He kissed my temple. "Then I'm glad I spilled that wine." I laughed, warmth spreading through me. "You and me both." Outside, the city hummed softly, life moving forward. Inside, the silence was comfortable, full, alive. And in that quiet, I finally understood. Heartbreak had once been silent, but love had a sound. It was his laugh against my neck. It was our hands finding each other in the dark. It was everything that came after the pain. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.